All right, folks, we're back for week 6, part 2 of Breedinum Radio here with Pertnier Outdoors. And I've got just one guest for part 2 here, JT Bouchard, one of the guys that does some filming and is part of the crew at Redneck Rising. He's had a humdinger of a season so far, so I wanted to get him on here to hear some of the stories that he has put together. So he had some success down in Oklahoma and then came back here and is had some success putting some venison on the ground with a doe and a buck from the sounds of it. So we'll hear those stories from him. So appreciate JT jumping on here. He's doing a lot of cool stuff. And if you have not checked out Redneck Rising, check them out. They've got the social media stuff, of course, but they've also got a YouTube channel and put together some good films and some entertaining local-based stuff. So check those guys out as well. Was planning on getting a couple other guys on, but just not enough hours in the day trying to get everybody's schedules to line up. So my buddy Rob Herman whacked a nice buck over in the Trumansburg area. So congrats to Herm. At some point we'll get him on here. I want to hear about his whole fall doing the photography with elk hunters and chasing people around out in the mountains of Colorado, and then hear the story about that buck. So I'm sure we'll get him on here at a later date to have a longer form convo. But John Peterson, he's one of the guys, I would say he's Pertnier pro staffer, Pertnier, and he shot a buck. All he needed was about 15, 20 minutes last night, ran out behind the house and shot a great buck. And he said all really was not much to the story, and right now he's processing the deer, being how warm it is. He wanted to get it cut up as quick as he could, so Johnny is not able to jump on and tell that story, but congrats to him, and I'll put the pictures up here on this post as well. Since I kind of sort of told the story, he put a tree up, the deer walked by, threw an arrow at it, and the rest is history. Now he's cutting it up, so that's the story. Good one there. So I will put that up, and keep forgetting to plug John. I know we put a couple posts up, but he does European mounts, deadhead. European mounts is what he calls his little side hustle. So if you are, doesn't matter what the buck is or what the animal is, John's doing it. So if you've got a bear skull or you got a deer that you would like to get the skull European mounted, John does a great job. He does all of ours here, all of my whole hunting crew, everybody out here locally in the Western New York area. He's doing them for us. He's even recreated some points for me that, I tend to shoot deer that it seems like they like to fight and break their tines off. So I keep shooting a bunch of 7-pointers. So John's done me a solid and made them 8-pointers. So that's not important to the story. When they're up on the wall, they look pretty, but it's something that he has the ability to do. So check John out. Easiest way to get a hold of him, I guess I'll throw an image of his business card up on the post for this podcast. But he is located in Lancaster and happy to do your European mounts for you. So check him out on Facebook. He's got a page. Appreciate that. And I am yammering, so I'm going to stop. Enjoy JT's story, and great luck to you this weekend when you hit the woods. Hopefully it's a good one, and you can fill that tag in the last archery weekend before we get the old bang sticks out. See you, everybody. Keep fading them.
Breedinum Radio, brought to you by Pertnier Outdoors, your source for all things deer hunting and the rut here in New York State, right in your backyard, so you can get up in the stand and pound them all season long.
And today, cold front comes in. Dude, it's going to be perfect. Did an all-day sit. I didn't see a damn deer. How does that happen?
Isn't that the way it works, man?
Oh, killing me.
That's deer hunting in a nutshell.
Yeah.
All right. We'll get her officially rolling. JT Bouchard is joining me, one of the Redneck Rising crew. He was on with us about a month and a half ago on the podcast for a full-length episode. But JT has been hunting quite a bit and been off lately, kind of on a little bit of a vacation hunting-wise. You've had a hell of a season so far. So I wanted to get you on here to give a kind of a rundown of the deer you've killed, but also what you're seeing, being that you've been out so much of late, heading into this upcoming weekend, kind of what you think is what your strategy is. So I just threw a lot at you. So I guess first introduce yourself, where you're from, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, awesome. Appreciate you having me on. JT Bouchard from Barton, New York. That's in Tioga County, kind of close to the Pennsylvania border in the middle of the state. Yeah, this season's been off to a good start. Usually I like to get a couple deer down by now. It's nice to get a little bit of pressure off. Opening day, I shot a doe. I was in Maine, right at the tail end of, or right before hunting season started here in New York, and got the itch to get in the woods, go after whitetail. Came back, shot a doe, and then really nothing too crazy. I mean, the middle of October is always hard to hunt, but I had a big trip planned to go to Oklahoma, and I went down there with my brother. We've been planning that trip out for about, I'd say, a good 3 years. And you alluded it. I've been taking some time off this year with COVID and everything happened. My work was nice enough to give us a couple extra weeks off. So
oh, nice.
That's kind of how the Oklahoma trip happened. So figured I'd take advantage of getting an extra week off and plan that trip out. We picked the end of October, which is one of my favorite times to hunt here in New York or in Pennsylvania. But we picked that because that's the muzzleloader season down there. They have a 1 week muzzleloader window in between bow and gun season, and that's kind of really when their rut is just starting to pick up down there. So went down to Oklahoma. My brother has been doing a lot of scouting down there. He hunts some public land, but primarily private. Oklahoma is a little bit different in kind of how you can ethically and legally take a deer. You can hunt over bait down there, which was kind of weird. I know the first time we didn't just hunt on private land. You can't bait on public. You can only bait on private.
Okay.
And the one piece of private land that he was kind of putting most of his efforts in, he had one bait station up on the top of the mountain. And, he was sending me some trail camera pictures, some absolute monsters down there, man. Just, it's insane, So put that trip together, and I left Friday at, I think it was 11 o'clock. And the math worked out to where if I pretty much only slept for like a nap, like a couple hour window, I could get down there to hunt Saturday night. So that motivated me to push through to get down there. And I was in the woods Saturday. So
nice.
Yeah, it worked out. Actually ended up shooting at a quite large buck the first night that we were down there. And that just kind of literally tipped off what was just an absolute roller coaster of a trip. It was, I saw more. There was not one, I take that back. There was one sit where I didn't see a deer, but I heard one grunting.
Yeah.
And that was in the area that I had the lowest probability of seeing a deer. It was like this mountain area that it's kind of like the Adirondacks. There's not a lot of deer. When you see a good one, they're there, or if you see one, it's a good one. But yeah, so that trip started off on a low, actually. It was funny because the property that we started the trip out on, the private spot, he had his spot that he was going to go to, and he just, we get to this fork in the road, and he's like, keep going down this path, and eventually you'll see a double stand, and that's the spot that, you'll sit. And I'm not one to sit other people's stands, but for the first night, I figured I'd sit it and kind of see what was going on. I like to, get mobile, move around a little bit, but not knowing anything about it, I went there, figured I'd give the first night just to sit. I climb up in the stand and hated the spot, hated the setup. It's all oak trees there. They're smaller oak trees, and everything was still holding its leaves. So I couldn't see anything. I couldn't see anything at all. And, obviously I'm filming with Redneck Rising. So even if I saw a deer, I wouldn't be able to film it. It was thick. So I sat there for maybe like an hour, and I was like, screw this. I got down, moved on the ground, and it wasn't 10 minutes, man. And I turned around because I heard something, and there's a nice big 8-point, a bigger deer than I've ever shot. Literally walks right underneath the stand. Jeez. And is just mulling around. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? So I try to scoot around to get a shot at him. He runs off, gives me a shot at about 100. I took it. I missed. Saw what ended up being the buck that I shot, not knowing it. I saw that buck come up. There's a big ridge off to the side of the property, and there's a creek drainage down in there. And that buck, he came up with 2 does and was just working a scrape, moving along. And he ended up going back down the ridge because I think one of the does spooked or something like that. I can't really remember. I was kind of in shock because of how big he was.
Yeah.
That was the first night we looked just to make sure, I missed that buck. No hair, no blood, followed the track for a while. And, we, right where he was standing, we went back and looked at the footage. Right where he was standing, there was a little chunk of missing out of the little sapling. I think I hit it and it deflected my bullet. But after that, we did quite a bit because it was a lot of raining down there. It rained for four days straight almost. We hit a lot of public land because Oklahoma muzzleloader tag comes with 3 doe tags also.
Oh, nice.
So we figured we'd hit the public land and see if we couldn't get on a doe or 2, and so in scouting around. So we put a lot of time in scouting, which is awesome. Oklahoma's, dude, it's beautiful. Like I had no idea how hilly it was. One of the public pieces we went to is all surrounded by a Army Corps of Engineers lake.
Okay.
And it just very, very pretty. You know what I mean? Definitely the kind of place that I can't wait to go back and hunt. Very different than what we're used to up here, in the Northeast. But
yeah, you don't hear a lot about Oklahoma, really.
It's legit. It really is. It feels like the wild, wild west. Like it's small towns. Everybody drives a 4-wheel drive truck. A lot of cattle farms. Everybody's got their Okie accent, and
Nice.
it's a cool place. We're already talking about making a trip down there next year because it was a blast. But a couple days later, after we pounded the public land for a couple days, we went back to that same piece of property, and I was going in, and there was a small buck in the like going up that road, and he crossed over and kind of went up to where my brother was at. And as I got closer to the area, and I'd seen a bunch of deer throughout the trip working this ridge, so I kind of wanted to make sure that I was in a spot over there on that ridge where I could see any deer coming up, because I kind of felt like that they were bedding down. And actually got a little bit ahead of myself. The morning, that was the afternoon. So that morning, I went in on the other side of that ridge, and there's a big cliff. And I went down there, and it was bedding in there. It was thick, and I knew that's where those deer were bedded at. So that night we go in, and I wanted to set up on that ridge. So the wind wasn't right for that original area where I saw that big buck at. But I ended up sitting on the ground downwind of that area where I could see the ridge. Had a couple doe go by me. 2 of them were like within 10 yards, which is always stressful when you're sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
They didn't see me. They crossed right in front of me. Got good film of them. And then right at last light, I could hear something kind of there's a thicket off to my right the lip of that ridge. I could hear something in there, and my gut told me that it was, it was a buck at least. I didn't know it was the buck. But got my camera set up and, just kept telling myself, like, settle down, because these deer down there, they're big, but not big bodies, big racks. So like when you see one of them, if you see a good one, you're kind of like, your tongue's hanging out. You know what I mean? Like you can get buck fever really.
Yeah.
It's intimidating. I don't know how to explain it. Like the first couple of days, my brother was like, dude, you need to settle down. I'm like, you don't understand. Like that buck I saw the first night, that was one of the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life.
Right.
So, and I mean, you can, and I told him this when I was talking about coming back, I was like, dude, I can scout my ass off all season long. And the amount of big bucks that I saw just in this 1 week trip was more than I'd see in 5 or 6 years of, hunting around in New York. So I was like, I'll definitely come back. But anyway, so I hear some noise off to my right, and I put the muzzleloader on my knee, get everything settled before I even see the deer. And there's a tree off to the right, and I just see a glimpse of his rack, because it's almost to the end of legal light. And I see his rack coming, and it's just tall, massy, big rack. So I knew it was a shooter. And I could have filmed him for a while. I don't think he was going anywhere, but man, as soon as he came out in the open, I put it right on his shoulder and just took the shot. I wasn't messing around with
No.
And of course, muzzleloader, you get the big white flash. You know, you can't see anything, and he runs off. I thought I heard him crash. I texted my brother, and he knew what happened. You know, right at last light when someone shoots, it's typically a pretty good indication that they, you know, saw a good buck. But so he actually comes running down the hill because he's thinking that I shot at a good one. And I texted him and said, you know, it was big. And he comes down. I'm messing around with my camera gear and everything. He wants to go, you know, look for it. And I just didn't want to rush it. But we go down the ridge. We couldn't find blood, no hair. We couldn't even find his tracks because it was a lot of, like I said, the oak trees were still holding leaves.
Yeah.
And it was so wet that you'd think that you'd be able to see tracks up there, but that ground just like soaked it in. It wasn't like mud, you know what I mean? It was like kind of, I don't know. It was hard to find tracks.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we
sometimes it's almost better to have fresh leaves because they get kicked up and it's kind of obvious where they ran.
Oh, it was brutal, you know? And then, so in that moment, I'm like, did I just miss another one, you know? And everything's going through my mind, like, you know, why did I miss the first one? I never resighted my muzzleloader, and I just assumed it was operator error.
Right.
So, you know, my brother, he's like, dude, I don't know if you hit it or not, you know? Because, I mean, you'd think you'd see some blood. You know, you shoot it with a 50 cal muzzleloader at 60 yards, you'd see something, but no sign of it. So we go down the ridge, looking, you know, where they're coming out of that bedding, and we hear a deer down below start blowing. And, you know, you got to go from the highest of highs to the lowest of lows, thinking that maybe so we talked about it. I'm like, dude, I don't see how I could have missed. You know, I had it right where it needed to be. And so he starts looking, we split up. And at this point in time, we're just, you know, it's dark. Just looking for a body. And neither one of us expected the buck to run kind of back. We both thought he went straight down. You know, what I heard was straight down, but he went back. So I was walking and we split up. He went one way, I went the other way, and I ended up seeing the white of his belly.
No shit.
Yeah, went over to him, and the cool part was, so he had been sending me trail camera pictures of some of the deer that he was seeing, and there was this one really nice buck that had the one brow tine had 2 points, and the other brow tine had 3 points.
Yeah.
And it looked like a flame, you know. It actually had a kicker off the back, so it was technically 4 points. But sure enough, that was the buck, you know. So that was the one I kept saying. I was like, dude, that's the one I want to shoot. So it was kind of neat to, you know, to call my, I don't want to say call my shot, but I was like, that's the one I want to shoot.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know.
So I'm curious on that shot situation, because we have gun season coming. I think there's some stuff to take away from that situation. So what you said, the buck kind of went, you know, we're on video, this is going to be audio. So you were assuming the buck went downhill.
Yep.
And it sounds like you were kind of up on top of a ridge, and it seemed like the buck went down over the ridge downhill, and you ended up finding that he cut back on the ridge coming away from you.
So yeah, we were about, I'd say it was about 60 yards from where I shot the deer to where the ridge breaks, and it starts to go down, but it doesn't go down. It would go down, it clears out because it was thick, and right where the ridge, at the point of the ridge, it opened up a little bit. There wasn't quite as much timber, and then the ridge got real steep. I mean, we're talking from where that point would be to the ridge gets steep is like maybe another 60 yards. Mm-hmm. So what he did was he ran straight down the way he came, but instead of dumping off that point going down, he kicked left, and he just hard ran left, and then he crashed right there.
Yeah.
So when I thought I heard the crash, you know, and as I was going in there, and then I realized, man, I could have just been hearing him break through this timber and then hit this open patch.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he did that. Usually, you know, in my experience, when they're running downhill, they just run downhill.
Yeah.
You know, the only thing I can think of is, you know, where I had been seeing that deer was coming up where he ran down, but maybe he was, you know, working that little soft spot on that ridge.
Right.
And coming in that way. And then he was just headed back to his bed or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Did you end up finding much blood or no?
Nothing.
Jeez. What are you running for? What are you using for bullets?
Geez, what are they? I can't remember the brand. They're the Hollow Point 295 grain. Mm-hmm. And then I put 3 of the pellets in there, like a good hot load.
Yeah. I just asked those questions because I've had the same issues with my muzzle loader, and since we started going out west, started using bigger bullets. We were using 348 power belts, and then they seem to have done away with those. Power belt did, and I want to say they're 425 grain, or the freaking bullets that we're using now they're just, I mean, they are big bullets, and you hit a deer with
Sure.
that's opening up. But I was running Thompson Center, the Thompson Center bullets for several years, the 250 grain, and I had multiple deer that I had just perfect shots on, as far as right where you'd want it to be, in the spot where you should have double lung blood, and in the snow having no sign
I
for
never get good blood.
an
Never get
extended
good blood
period
in
of
muzzleloader.
distance. Yeah. So it's just something to think about. Like, I'm glad we talk about that, especially coming up to gun season, is that with a bow, it's fairly easy. You got a relatively close shot. You kind of know exactly the scenario. You can watch the animal. But with a gun, things happen so fast, and it happens at a lot of times a further distance, that if you don't know exactly what happened, I mean, you could be in a real tough spot trying to find
Yeah.
sign that you hit that animal.
And I think the biggest thing, from that is just paying attention to what happens after the shot. What I remember was I knew direction of travel, and then I heard a crash. Whether that was him breaking through the timber or not, but usually if you hear what sounds like a crash or him breaking through timber, you'd expect to see at that point in time, maybe some blood, maybe some hair, signs of a struggle on the ground, something, even if he didn't go down, which would give you a point of travel. But
Right.
Fortunately I heard it, and he didn't go that far. In hindsight, he probably ran maybe 80 yards.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah. Can just throw you for a loop.
Oh yeah, no, for sure.
So that I'll post get a picture of you with that buck for the show. We'll post that up too. But I'd been following right along with you on that, and then you came home, and then you were kind of, in a way, radio silence, and then all of a sudden you're like posting all these pictures with costumes on and freaking deer. I'm like, what the hell's this guy been up to?
Yeah, well, because as fortunate as I was to have that extra week to go down to Oklahoma is a state that you're not allowed in New York to just come back to work and stuff, right? It's a quarantine state. So I wasn't going to take the 2 weeks off, even though I would love to have taken the 2 weeks off.
Right.
So I came back, and on Monday I took my my COVID test. But I had to wait for the results of that to come back. And my plan was to hunt Monday, Tuesday, and I figured probably Wednesday is about the time that I would get the results back. So my plan was, as soon as I got back to
that was like the last week of October then, right?
Yeah, I came back November 1st, I think.
Oh, okay.
So I knew I had 3 days, you know what I mean? Which, listen, when you get a whole week to go hunt the rut in another state, to come back to have 3 days to hunt your home state,
yeah.
I felt good about it. And then this week I took off 5 days too to hunt. So my plan was to get down to Pennsylvania, and because historically my trail cameras tell me that the first 2 weeks of November, specifically around the 6th, is the best time to get in the woods on some of the areas that I hunt down there. So I was going to go down, and I hunt primarily public land in PA. So I was going to go down and scout my way around and get set up down there with that time. But on my way back from Oklahoma, my wife called me and said that my daughter had to quarantine from school because one of the staff at the school tested positive for COVID, and she was her class was in close proximity. So I was like, oh, you gotta be kidding me, I had all these, and listen, I can't be,
yeah,
I couldn't not do the dad detail there. So I was pretty much stuck at home with my kids. So took advantage of that though. So when my wife would get home at 3:00, I was standing in the driveway, literally like 100%, like, where you at? Oh, I timed my son's nap to where when she came home, he was sleeping, and my daughter was just in the house, doing whatever. And literally she would come in and I'd go out. But a couple of the nights it was kind of warm. And my daughter, she's been hunting. She's 5. She's been hunting with me for 3 years. She's almost 6, but she's been going out with me for 3 years. And we've never been able to, we've seen deer, you know, we've shot a turkey together, but we've never been able to shoot a deer. And I put in a small food plot behind the house, and it hasn't drawn hardly anything for buck or anything like that. It was more or less just a spot to kind of mess around with the kids and stuff. But I put up a ground blind that day, took her out. I had hunted the night before that. It was actually kind of a funny story. So because my wife would get home at 3 o'clock, you know, that in a daylight savings, you really only have 2 hours. So I couldn't venture very far from home. So I decided to sit the food plot. I haven't sat it yet. And I went in there and I'm climbing up this tree with the saddle, and I get up, I'm tethered in. I haven't got my camera arm or nothing like that on yet. And 4 doe start coming off this hill. So I'm like, all right, that's cool. You know, I'm trying to get the camera situated. And then all of a sudden, because this food plot is like 200 yards away from my house, I hear my wife start yelling at our puppy. He's 1 year old. I hear him yelling, Ruger, Ruger, come back, Ruger, no. I'm like, oh crap. Like, I know what that means. He runs straight up into the food plot, chases the deer off.
God.
Which, whatever, you know, again, it was just a throw together hunt. But so then he's looking for me. He can smell, you know, because I had a little bit of a drag just right into the middle of the food plot.
Yeah.
So he's sniffing that around. He circles around right to where I entered the woods to go up to this tree, looks around. I'm filming him. He has no idea I'm there. And I don't want him to see me because he's going to start barking.
Right.
And he just takes a massive shit right there. Right? Of course.
You got footage. You got footage of that, right?
Oh yeah. So
I'm sure that's exactly what Chad needs right now, is just some footage of a dog taking a hot steamer.
Honestly, Chad would not expect anything. He knows that I'm a shit show when it comes to hunting. I don't know how I pull it off, man. It's horrible.
Yeah.
But so he does that, then he runs off. And so I'm like, all right, back to hunting. Not 5 minutes later, I look over and there's a pretty nice buck. I thought it was nicer than it really was. There's 2 6 points. I thought there was only one. There's a huge 6 point on this property. I mean, he's got piss poor genetics for antler points, but he's got a big rack on him. And I've had 2 or 3 trail camera pictures of him, and he's probably a 4.5, 5.5-year-old buck. He's real nice. And I thought it was that 6 point. So I was ready to drop the hammer on it, but I think it was just a 2-year-old offspring of it. But he comes around the corner and he gets on my dog's track. And you see, I mean, he was coming in on a string. His demeanor changed. He starts sniffing around. He goes over, he smells the deuce, and out he went. He was done with that.
Yeah.
So, but I saw doe. More doe came back in that night. So I thought that'd be a perfect setup for my daughter. So I took her out the next day and set up a ground blind. And it was early, like 4 o'clock. And we had 1 doe come in, and pretty cool. It was 15 yards in front of us. And she got about 15 minutes to sit there. You know, whenever you're inside of 20 yards with a whitetail on the ground blind, like, you got to be pretty, you know, patient and not move. And she asked me a couple of times, why are you shooting it? You know, and I was like, I'm just waiting for a perfect broadside. I didn't want to mess it up in front of my kid, you know. And but so she finally gave me, you know, the good opportunity. She looked away for a split second. I drew back, double lunged her, and she ran off and she stopped. And I thought she got a little wobbly. I thought she was going to go down right in front of us, which I would have liked, so she could have seen that. But instead, she walked up this hill, and I didn't realize that she walked 10 more feet, and then she bedded down and died right there. But I made her wait an hour, and then we went to track her. And yeah, so when you say costumes, that was my daughter's pretty animated. She had a bat outfit on and cat ears and whiskers.
Yeah. Hey, it works in the blind. I mean, you got to wear dark clothing, so that works.
Yeah, I couldn't argue that for sure.
Yeah.
She was actually more camouflaged in the blind than I was, because I had camo on. So
yeah,
kudos to her. But no, she was stoked, man. Yeah, she thought it was cool. So then the next night, you know, there I am, 3 o'clock, standing in my driveway, waiting for my wife to get home. And on another piece of the property, there's one scrape I found that has just been gold. And it seems like all the deer like to hit that scrape more than I've seen anywhere else on the property. And I'm running about 8 cameras on this particular piece. And that particular scrape has been pretty hot. So my wife pulls up, and it was hot that night. It was like 75 degrees. And I asked her, I said, hey, instead of, having me walk through the woods, can you drive me down the road and just drop me off? So I hop in the car. She drives me down. I walk in, find the tree. The wind was set up good for it. I was right in line on the side of, it's like a little clear cut. And I was on the same side as the scrape, but that's just, I couldn't get on the other side because of the wind. And get up there in the saddle, and geez, I wasn't in the tree 15 minutes, and I heard a couple steps off to my left-hand shoulder, and I thought he was a little bit nicer at first than he really was. He came out, and he was a nice 3.5-year-old. Just didn't have very good rack genetics, but dude, the hunt played out so good. Sometimes I'm hunting for a big deer, and sometimes I'm hunting for the experience. And just the way that the whole week was unfolding, like Oklahoma, shooting one with my daughter, and then literally setting up on this scrape in 15 minutes, this buck comes in to work it. And it wasn't just that happened. I mean, he was giving me some good footage. He was hitting the licking branch. He was standing there. Actually, at one point in time, I was like, I'm not going to shoot him. I turned my GoPro off, and then he walks across. There's a scrape on the other side. He walks over there, starts working that scrape, and I was like, dude, you just killed yourself. So I turned the GoPro back on, I mean, it was pretty. He's a nice deer, real good body, real big buck. So I was happy to take him. He was at 24 yards, clueless that I was there, gave me time to settle into the shot, and double lunged that one, called my kid. He's like, hey, you want to come track a buck? So she, got changed real quick, and then came down and she helped me track that buck. But so yeah, that's a couple awesome. Good days. And then now I'm rut vacation down in Pennsylvania, and I'm exhausted. I'm going back to the drawing board tonight. I don't know. I was on deer good, and the last 24 hours just seems to be a change in the weather. I don't know.
Do you think it's some lockdown happening or what?
After tonight, 100% yes. So I started this week on, Monday I had to work, but I hunted Monday morning, and I had a nice buck come in on a brand new piece of public that I've never even hunted. He came into 40 yards, and then Tuesday was my first full day off. I was on deer. I mean, every sit up until Thursday?
Yeah.
Every sit up until today, I've been seeing, some doe running around, really early action, lots of, bucks coming and grunting, chasing does, that kind of stuff. And then but they were all small, nothing big. And then today, great weather and just absolutely zero deer movement. Yesterday, I had one doe run by and have some small bucks chasing, but that seeking phase that where you usually in midday, you see those big bucks on their feet cruising around, that has not at all been the case for this last week.
Yeah.
Like that's done. And that's how I killed that buck in New York. That was in the beginning of November when they're still seeking, but I think right now we're at peak.
Yeah.
And they're just locked down.
Yeah, it certainly seems like it. And it's one of the fun parts about doing this and paying so much attention to what everybody's got going on locally, because you can kind of just see it happening. It seemed like right around Halloween weekend, things were really ramping up. The movement was really, there was a lot of pushing going around.
Yep.
We saw a lot of rutting activity. I think there was a few hot does right around Halloween, just based off of some of the stuff I saw and what my brother experienced and what our cameras were telling us. Really seemed like there was some of that activity going on. But then you kind of had that classic, obviously not all the does are going to come in at the same time. But, we're starting to see some trends. I don't know about you, but, we're seeing trends of, it seems like right about around the 7th, 8th, 9th in the exact same thicket the last 3-4 years that we've really been paying super close attention to cameras. Stuff's happening in that area. Same thing with other spots. So it's kind of like, are you seeing any kind of trends? I mean, with the stuff you're hunting, with the areas you're watching and paying attention to?
Yeah, so pretty much in Pennsylvania right now, I'm hunting 2 different pieces of public land that are about about 45 minutes away from each other. The new one, like I said, lots of early bucks moving through. I had Tuesday morning, I had it was insane. Like I'm up the tree, I have my backpack in my hand, and I have a buck chase a doe in grunting, and then they work off. And then I had another buck come in, and then I had another buck come in. That's the same property that I had that one buck coming in on a different part of that property. The scrapes are still, super active there. Scrapes are still opening up there. So, in that area, I don't think that those does are in peak. The other public land that I was at today, this morning and last night, I think the peak is already, and obviously in 6,000 acres, you can have hot spots. But
Right.
I think in all the areas that I've been going to and scouting, I think that we're in lockdown in that area. So
Yep.
yeah, it definitely, and you can see the sign, where I was hunting there, the scrapes were blown up. You know what I mean? Like there was an area, it was like a cluster, I'd say in like a 50-yard circle, there was probably 15, 20 open scrapes.
Wow.
And within, 4-day, a lot of time, I went in there and I'd say all but 2 were active, and I had good deer moving through there, but they were just going back to bed.
Yeah.
There was no chasing going on. Haven't seen any doe in there, and I was seeing doe there before. So, that area just seems to be pretty put on pause. They're still working scrapes.
Yeah.
Just not like they were, a week, 2 weeks ago.
Yep. Yeah. It's so specific to the area, to the topography, to the property. I mean, we're seeing totally different stuff here on the farm than what we're seeing and what I'm hearing from you down there at the same time, so it's different regions, different types of just different area. So like our scrapes are dead. They are dead. They've been dead for a couple of weeks, and it's like, well, what are you going to do? It's now we got to readjust, but now we're knowing what's going on like right now with all these cell cams. It's telling us action right now. Whereas we'd be hunting those spots right now without the intel and getting pissed off because we're not seeing nothing. So, it's in a way it's good and it's bad because you're getting frustrated because you're not seeing anything on the cameras, but at least you're not wasting your time in the tree thinking that something's going to happen that's not. You know what I mean?
So, in what you just said is my last week.
Yeah.
So, because I don't have any cell cameras down there, and I think I have to readjust now. I've been primarily, for sure, in October and in the beginning of November, I love to hunt scrapes. Like that's my jam. Primarily, finding scrapes around bedding. But right now, I need to get off of those scrapes and I need to switch over. I need to get closer to bedding. They're not worried about sign right now. They're just waiting for another doe to pop in. So
yeah,
if they're cruising, they're not where I'm at right now. I need to adjust.
Yeah. Is your strategy going to be, for yourself and for others that are in your same situation for this weekend? Are you going out, like trying to almost kind of walk yourself into a hot doe with a buck, or are you trying to get close to a bedding area and let it all hopefully come to you? What's your game plan?
Well, no, so I can't, nothing's going to happen by itself right now. I have areas, I keep tabs. And so I try to, know where good bedding areas are and where good doe are. Right now, my strategy is going back to the areas that I've seen good amounts of doe. Find the doe, stay with the doe, and then work in on those bedding areas that they're utilizing. And I know where most of the bedding areas are that the doe use just from years of scouting in those spots. Or at least I can, guess and put myself in a, transition line in between bedding or something like that. But yeah, I'm not really scouting my way in at this point in time. Know where the deer are and then set up on the most probable bedding areas, based off of what wind direction is at the time.
Yep.
That's going to be my approach right now. Just got to get in with the doe.
Makes good sense. I'm going to stay bedded at home. and maybe make some breakfast and make sure the laundry's done. That's what I'm going to do for the next week. So
yeah, I'm
that's,
jealous.
that's my life. I tossed the idea around of making a trip down to PA on Sunday to hunt for the day because I have my archery license and obviously my regular season tag, my buck tag, but it's just not worth that's a 2 hour drive to the hunting area, and just to run down there, it's just pushing it. So it's not worth it because it's that one Sunday. Are you going to hunt Sunday down there?
Is that this Sunday or next
it's
Sunday?
this Sunday and then the first Sunday of their rifle. So the Sunday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah, thanks. So now I'm hunting on Sunday. Appreciate that.
Yeah,
I thought
you're
it was
welcome.
next Sunday for some reason.
Apologize to your, that'd be funny. I mean, you can hunt next Sunday if you want. I won't tell anybody. It's between you and I and the 7 people listening to this.
Yeah, no kidding, right? Yeah, no, I'll be down there. I have to work Sunday night, and it's supposed to rain Sunday morning, but this is the time of the year. I just, as much as I want to, sleep in, or I have to, I'll hate myself for the rest of the season if I don't push. So.
Yep. Well, I wish you luck this weekend. I hope you can fill that tag. It'd be one hell of a start to your season if you could, fill your buck tag down there and.
Oh, I know it.
Putting together quite the dream season. So I appreciate you jumping on. It's good getting a quick rundown of your season so far. So good luck to you the rest of the way. And I know we'll stay in touch. So
yeah, absolutely, man. And rifle season can't come soon enough, right?
Amen to that. Lock and load.
Yeah, baby.
I'm ready. All right. See you, JT. Take it easy, bud.
All right, man. Yeah, take care.